AIA video 17.1 looks at earnings expectations and how expectations about the amount of earnings a company will post in the future actually arise. American Express is featured along with some other companies whose earnings exceeded market expectations in the quarter ended September 2021. We can see in this top visualization for that quarter ended September 2021, 12 companies exceeded expectations, 6 failed to meet expectations, and 1 met expectations. So we're going to focus on these exceeded expectations. For American Express, a simple line chart illustrates how the different measures of forecasted earnings per share, high, consensus, and low, change over time. And here we've got the projections from 2021 through to 2023. We're looking at the high, consensus, and the low, and how they change over time, as I mentioned. And we just want to note that the consensus forecasted earnings per share, that middle line, the green line there in the middle, is based on input from analysts who study particular companies like American Express and the industry, and then try to estimate the future earnings per share. And so it's quite a challenge, as you can imagine. But presumably, the more analysts who provide estimates, again, presumably, the better the estimate of the forecasted earnings per share, but not always, as there is imperfect information in the marketplace. And the company itself may not be signaling sufficient information for the analysts to refine their estimates and input into their models. So when the actual results are released, they are often different from the forecasted earnings per share estimates. And we can see up there, 12 out of that number there, we've got 19. So 12 exceeded, 6 failed to meet. So 18 of the group, 18 of 19 failed to be exactly on. So this creates what they call an earnings surprise. Okay. So in this video, we will, number one, illustrate using a stacked column chart. Down at the bottom, that varying numbers of analysts estimate forecasted earnings per share for different companies. So we can see American Express has got 16 analysts on it, but some of the others have got lower numbers. Number two, we're going to show how a stacked column chart, this one at the bottom again, can be how we can resort the data for easy presentation. All right, so we've got it sorted at, right now alpha order, but we can resort that. And number three, using a simple visualization like a line chart up top there, we can show that consensus forecasted earnings per share is not necessarily the midpoint between the high and low forecasted earnings per share that each analyst gives. And we can see, in a couple of periods, it's sort of the midpoint, but sometimes it's not. All right, so let's start with the bottom stacked column chart. So there's lots of information here. So a tip, and I've used this tip before, I love this one, use the focus mode, that little thing there. So it just, let's go back there. I want to highlight the visual that I want to talk about. So there I've highlighted that bottom one, and let's click on the focus mode, and it just makes it a little bit bigger so it's easier to see. So that's tip number one, use the focus mode where there's a lot of detail. And in this case, we've ordered this. It's roughly alpha order with the number 1 being first and then ABC. And maybe I wanted to present it that way to be neutral in my presentation. But now maybe I want to, when I'm telling the story, focus on the number of estimates. So I can resort it live. So I can just go up to those 3 little dots and go to the sort axis feature. And here I've got it sorted by company, so it's doing alpha, but I could sort it by the number of estimates. And you can see immediately then, I can clearly see at the one end of the spectrum, American Express, it's got 16 analysts estimating, and at the other end, Metro City, 1 analyst estimating. So tip number 2 is use those interactive features of Power BI for clarity, including the sort axis, and always go for that more options up there. You might find something that's interesting there that might help you tell your story a little bit better. So let's go back to our dashboard then, and let's look at this top AMEX earnings per share line chart. And here, and this is just a simple one, I can use the hover feature if I want to just now pause and talk about that particular thing. So, do people expect the consensus EPS forecast to be the midpoint between the high estimate and the low estimate? So I can pause here and people can easily see. They can see the line, the trend. I can move it down to the bottom there if I want to show the lines as well, and they've got the data there. So it's again focusing my audience on what I want them to look at. So in this case, why would the consensus estimate be closer to the top? Well, probably given that there's 16 analysts estimating, probably more of them are estimating towards the higher range, and so it's pushing that consensus up to the top. Okay, so that's tip number 3, use the hover feature when you want to stop and provide some additional insight. And that is it for AIA Video 17.1.